Moses was 80, a reluctant leader. He begged God, no, I don't want to lead. I'm not fit for it. We all have God-given abilities, and they're all needed right now. Whatever form, whatever talents you have, they're needed right now to save our country. And I believe that we can do this. We will do this. Will it be easy? No. Will we be stronger at the end of it? Yes. And I really think our greatest days in America are ahead of us.
Kari Lake, your book is out today. Today, it's Unafraid, and it's not one of those campaign biographies written by Chris Christie that you don't want to read because a ghostwriter wrote it. This is very real, and you're very real, and I'm excited that you've written a book that, as a writer, I think books should be readable.
It's very readable.
Thank you. No, I know.
And here's
thank
why.
you.
I didn't realize this, but one of the questions people are asking me is, if you wrote a book, you must be running for something.
Yeah.
Well, and I may run for something.
Yeah.
I'm not going to deny that. But that's not why I wrote this book.
Yeah.
I was asked to write the book by publishers who thought my story was interesting.
Yeah.
And I wrote it when I was not even thinking about running for anything again. And because I had a fight to save our elections.
Yeah.
And so I wrote it from the heart. I'm a writer of 30 years, as a broadcast journalist, and I wanted this to be an interesting story where you could pick it up and start in any chapter, and it doesn't matter where you start.
Yeah.
I recommend starting from the beginning, but I wanted it to be an interesting book. This is not written by a consultant.
Yeah.
This comes from the heart, story of how I got to where I am, and it's also to encourage people to stay in this fight. You only lose when you quit.
Well, the idea that this really didn't hit home for you until fairly recently is part of what makes it exciting for people. Because I get excited when you hear that someone who didn't get it gets it and is all in. Nobody's more all in than you are, and it just thrills me. And of course, I secretly hope that you will be President Trump's vice presidential candidate. Do you have any Choctaw blood or African American in your back? Anything like that would
I'm just American. I'm a little bit of everything, and we probably do have a little bit of Native American in our family because of where my grandparents are from in Wisconsin. I know. Yeah. But I'm just an American. I'm a mixture of everything, and I always consider.
I'm going to guess Chickasaw. No, I honestly, you're such a bright spot, in the political future of the country. And I want to talk about what happened to you in your race. Let's talk about that, because I, expected you to win, and technically you did win. What happened? When did you understand what was going on, and how did the traitor Republicans within your state work against you and we the people?
Well, the guys running the Maricopa County elections they also started a super PAC to raise money in the primary to stop me. So the guys running our election, first of all, I'm running against a woman who oversees the entirety of the elections. She's the Secretary of State. She never recused herself. That's my opponent. And then the two guys running the Maricopa County elections ran a super PAC raising tens of thousands of dollars to stop election denier candidates. And we found out that all of their expenditures went toward one candidate, yours truly. So this is the kind of corruption we're up against, not to mention what they did on Election Day, rolling out broken machines, putting them in the Republican areas, knowing that our people were showing up to vote in person. And that's why I must push this out and say, we've got to show you guys where the corruption is and then fix it. And now they're suing me for speaking out about it. The guys who helped rig the election are now suing me for pointing out the corruption. This is just how sick the world is right now. But I'm not going to be afraid of that. I'm going to continue on, and we're going to get to the bottom of this, and the truth will eventually come out. And the whole book isn't all about the election, but I do like the chapter toward the end where I go back to Election Day. Some people said, why didn't you do more to prevent this? Well, how do you prevent this when they were going to intentionally print the wrong ballot out on Election Day? They printed the wrong ballot out on Election Day so the machines would jam. How do you prevent that? We did a lot. We got observers in there. We had lawyers on the scene. We had so many people around watching and working the polls that we were able to document what they were doing. And that then helped in our case. And this last chapter was a really hard one to write because it took me back to Election Day. Started with a great wake-up call from President Trump, wishing me luck for the day. And then immediately after I hung up with him, I looked at my phone. I had 60 text messages, videos of long lines of election workers saying, "I'm sorry, the machines don't work, the equipment isn't working here." And right then, my heart just sunk.
And because they knew.
I went, that's how they're going to cheat.
Right.
That's how they're going to take it.
Well, and just to be clear, because they, which is to say the Democrats or the opponents of anybody who loves this country, they know that most of us vote on the day of.
Right.
And so they have cheated way, 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 way up front. And if they can just jam everything up on the day of, it's mostly going to be people, voting for you and not your opponent.
75% of the people voting were voting for me on election day.
Well, Kari, part of the problem here, the larger problem for me in the culture, is that if you grew up in America, as we did, you grew up in a country where you basically, as I said earlier, trusted the processes, various processes. You basically said, look, I know people are going to angle to get an advantage, but out and out cheating is simply not something we've seen much of. In other words, you figure like we're going to play by the rules, maybe people are going to try to shave things here or there, but actual cheating, the idea that the other side would engage in
such blatant
genuine cheating, it's very hard to take that seriously until you have no choice. But it's only recently that we've seen the scale of it and the willingness of it, of those folks to do this. It's a horrifying reality.
And right in front of our face, knowing that we see it, knowing what they're doing, and basically, we're going to cheat, we're going to steal this election, and you're going to just have to live with it, is what they're telling us. And I think what's happening, this is why the powers that be hate populist candidates. I think they've been shaving a little here, shaving a little there for a long time. When you get a big populist candidate like the bull in the china shop named Donald Trump, it's a lot harder. You can't shave enough off on one side. You have to just blatantly stop counting, roll out the ballots, all the funny business they did. And the same with me. This is why they hate populist candidates. A, they can't control them.
Right.
They're not for sale.
Right.
You can't bribe them or blackmail them. They belong to the people. And that's what you get with Trump, me, and many other candidates out there, I think America First candidates. I do want to say one thing, though. When I walked away from my career, I really thought I was going to the last half of my life. I was 52 when I walked away. And I thought, well, things will get quiet, and I'll just live a quiet life behind the scenes. I kind of thought my best years were behind me.
Yeah.
And I just want people to know, as long as you are on this earth, breathing air and alive, you are needed. You are needed in this fight. Benjamin Franklin was 80.
80?
81, maybe.
No way. Actually, this is called a cliffhanger. You're going to find out all about who's this guy, Benjamin Franklin, when we come back. Don't go away. Talking to Kari Lake, brand new book today, Unafraid. You need to get a copy. Just saying. Kari, you were just saying something about Benjamin Franklin.
Well, I was talking about when I walked away from my career and just walked into the great unknown at 52. I kind of thought, okay, I don't want to say it's downhill from here, but it'll be a life that won't be as exciting as what I just experienced, 30 years in media.
Yeah.
And God had some different plans. And I just want people to know, a lot has happened. None of us are getting out of this unscathed. There's been sacrifice. People have walked away from jobs. Everyone I know who's had to make that sacrifice has told me, after I've met them, they'll say I had to walk away because I was forced to get a vax or whatever. You come out on the other side a better person for it when you stand up for your principles. Benjamin Franklin was 80 or 81 when they wrote the Constitution. 81.
He was 81, and he was the oldest member of the Constitutional
81, and he was
Convention.
Think how important his life was at 81 still. As long as you're breathing air on this planet, you are needed in this battle. Moses was 80.
Yeah.
Moses was 80, a reluctant leader. He begged God, "No, I don't want to lead. I'm not fit for it." We all have God-given abilities, and they're all needed right now. Whatever form, whatever talents you have, they're needed right now to save our country. And I believe that we can do this. We will do this. Will it be easy? No. Will we be stronger at the end of it? Yes. And I really think our greatest days in America are ahead of us.
Well, I would agree with you. I'm cautiously optimistic in the sense that I think that if everyone will fight, if people will wake up and do what is necessary and make the sacrifices, because there's still people hanging back who want to play it safe. And I go all around the country in a sense saying that place is the least safe place you can imagine. If you are standing on the sidelines while we're fighting for the soul of the nation, you're complicit. And I talk about this, I talk about it in my most recent book, but the parallel with the German church in the 1930s is horrifying. It is absolute, the silence of the German church, because they thought in the beginning, well, we're just going to play it safe. We're just going to be, we're going to look away. This is not our lane. It is exactly what God has called each of us to do. And so people hanging back and being in the middle, you are opening the door to evil. And everything we're seeing right now, let's face it, we're seeing madness, open border. Whoever dreamt that we could have an open border and that just things happening in this country, the transgender lunacy, the pride lunacy, the absolute madness that has come upon us is because there are people who aren't yet in the fight. And you're calling them to the fight.
Out.
I'm calling them to the fight. And we want to say that if you don't fight, folks, you're helping the bad guys win. There's no neutral here. And so it's why I have, been unapologetic about my support of President Trump and of folks like you who have been, you were robbed by corrupt people. Corruption is a moral issue.
The people of Arizona were robbed. It hurt me personally.
That's what I mean.
And I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But the people of Arizona were robbed and hurt by this.
Yeah.
And the people of our country, when you install a fraud who didn't win in the governor's office in a state like Arizona, it hurts our whole country. And if we sit back and some of these Republicans who are saying, let's stop talking about 2020 and 2022. I'm a mother. If we've got a problem in our home, if I discovered my son or daughter had an issue, they were using drugs or something like that, or my marriage had a problem, you don't solve that problem by putting your head in the sand and hoping and ignoring it and it'll go away. You address it. And we have to address these elections.
Yeah. Kari, I know there are tons of people listening to this program who really aren't familiar with your story, so I'm just thrilled for them to get to know you and to know that you're one of the tiny handful of people that gives me hope. You were willing not just to run for office in Arizona and to say what needs saying and to stand proudly with President Trump, but you were willing to say the election, your election, was stolen, and you were willing to fight, and you're still fighting. I mean, where is that right now? How does that go? How does that,
the system is corrupt from top to bottom.
Yeah.
And so, I never really expected to get a fair shot in court, a fair shake. But what we're doing is trying to show people where the corruption is. How are these elections being run? And we may not be able to get a judge to do the courageous thing, but we have the evidence. And when, the left says, or the media says, there's no evidence.
Right.
And I think, I can't help you. If you're not willing to stop and look at the evidence, I can't help you. But I am presenting the evidence. We have facts. This is evidence. This isn't made up stuff. But we haven't had a judge who's willing to do the courageous thing.
But isn't this exactly what happened in the 2020 election? In other words, the evidence is presented.
That never got heard, though.
It never gets heard. And then people say, well, they never showed the evidence. It's like, no. The judges refused to look at the evidence.
They refused to even take the cases in 2020.
Well, that's what I mean. And
this
so
time, our case, they took it. But they really limited it. We came out with 10 counts. We had in an election case, you have a very short period, a window that you can fight it. And the judge allowed us to fight 2 counts and gave us 5 hours in court to prove our case. And then the Maricopa County, who were suing over this, basically, they withheld the evidence. We were trying to get public records. We had to sue them to get the records. It's been a nightmare. But in all of that, we have been able to prove our case. The public, when they hear our case, understands what happened. And we're continuing. We're appealing our case right now. I'd like to see it go to the Supreme Court. I think the Supreme Court, I've heard, is interested in taking an election case. They realize that this is a critical moment if we do not have honest elections. All really? I want, Eric, is honest elections. If Trump would have won the way Joe Biden allegedly won, I wouldn't have been okay with that. And I love President Trump.
Well, no, cheating. We consider cheating wrong.
I love my country.
Yeah.
And so we're still fighting it. Now I'm going to be fighting defamation. Now the Maricopa County election official is suing me. And so I'm fighting that as well. But we just keep chugging along. We're going to fight fire with fire. We proved that laws were broken. We proved that procedures were broken, that the election manual wasn't followed. We proved a lot of that. And basically, by these judges not ruling in favor of the people, the people who had
Yeah.
their votes taken from
Yeah.
them, they have given their stamp of approval to not following that. They're basically saying these laws are just suggestions. You don't really have to follow them.
Right.
They're just suggestions.
Right.
You don't have to follow election laws, and that's a problem. That's a real problem. So we'll keep fighting. Eventually, and I understand how difficult it would be for a judge to say we're going to set aside Maricopa County. There's so much fraud and wrongdoing and maladministration. We're setting it aside.
Yeah.
Because then we're going to have to take somebody out who's fraudulently there and put in the duly elected governor. But you know what? It's happened before in Arizona. In 1916, they put in a fraudulently elected governor. They fought it. Guess how long it took? A full year in court. And the courts ruled that the governor that was sitting in the governor's office was fraudulently elected, and they took that governor out and put in the duly elected governor. So it has happened before.
A lot of people were hoping that would happen with Trump in the 2020 election. I think that the more evidence that came out, I mean, I remember, while it was happening, I just thought, this has never happened before. What is going on? Who made the call to shut down counting?
Who? Yeah.
In 6 states? Where I just thought, who did that?
Who's the mastermind?
And who did they have the right to do that? And is everybody so stupid that they don't say, wait a minute, that's fishy, let's look into that? I mean, even if it proves that, there was some explanation, the point is, if you don't say, wait a minute, that's fishy, let's look at this, let's open the books, let's see what happened.
Because it doesn't make sense.
Well, most Americans know that, but you were told, shut up, move along, don't be an election denier or whatever, and that's what tips you off that something is wrong when they tell you to shut up, when they tell you don't talk about this.
It's taboo to talk about election fraud.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's not taboo anymore to go into a elementary school and tell a little boy he can be a little girl. It's not. Those things used to be taboo, and I frankly wish they were taboo again. But what is taboo? The one thing you can't talk about is fraud in our elections.
Yeah.
I just recently, in the last month, put out a song. It's number one. It reached number one on the Billboard
song?
charts. It's called 81 Million Votes My Ass.
Blank.
I don't know if I can say that. I just did.
You can say Balaam's
Oops.
ass on
Okay.
this program. Anything that's in Scripture, you can say.
And it's a great song. It's number one on the charts. And I put it out. I did a speech for CPAC at a Reagan dinner, and I was talking about just how crazy things are. And Joe Biden didn't even campaign, and his policies are terrible, and he can't speak, all of this stuff. And I said, 81 million votes, my bleep.
Yeah.
A producer of a song came up to me and he said, can we use your spoken word? That speech was great. We want to use your spoken word in a song. I said, I don't know. I'm not a song. I don't sing. He goes, you don't have to sing. He put it together. I said, I will do it as long as it's a good song.
Yeah.
And because I slept on it and I thought, they don't want us talking about our rigged elections.
Yeah.
What if we not only talk about them, but we sing about them?
Yeah.
And it's a really fun song. You have to go to Spotify or Apple or whatever you go.
Well, listen, it's common sense. You know what it is? Maybe because my parents, I mentioned earlier, today's my dad's 96th birthday. A couple
You were
days ago
born
was
on your dad's birthday?
I happen to be born on his birthday. And most years, it's the same day. Some years it's different. No, I'm just kidding. Every year, literally every year. So, but the thing is, I think about my mom and dad, my old mom and dad, going to the polls and coming to this country from Europe, experiencing the hell of war-torn Europe, experiencing communism and hunger and all that, and coming to this country, the idea that people would steal their vote or make their vote not count, that's when I got really angry. And that's when I said, you know what? I don't care what anybody thinks of me except God. I am no longer in a place where I'm going to worry about what that person might think or that person. This is despicable.
That's right.
This is evil. People have died. You said it, and I say it all the time. People have died for this country and for our freedoms. And the idea that some wicked people would cynically engage in corruption and fraud and changing our elections, that is just the kind of thing that if you're not angry about that, there's something wrong with you. You are spoiled, and you're riding on the coattails of those who are willing to fight, and everybody needs to fight, which is, again, why I love you so much, and I love President Trump, because we need people who are willing to fight. We are in a battle for the soul of this nation, and I'm hopeful, but only because there are a handful of people that have been bold and unafraid.